I was limping down the quiet street, my baby snug against my hip, my other hand clutching a diaper bag that felt heavier than my whole body. Every step hurt, but I didn't dare slow down. I couldn't. Not today. Not when I had nowhere to go and nowhere to turn. My chest ached in more ways than one, and exhaustion wrapped around me like a suffocating blanket. I felt small, invisible, and utterly alone in the world that had suddenly turned against me. And then I saw him. My dad. His eyes widened in disbelief before narrowing in concern, and for a moment he froze as if time itself had stopped. The sight of me, limping with my baby balanced precariously on my hip, must have broken something in him. His voice, usually calm and steady, trembled just enough to let me know the worry in his heart. "Why are you walking?" he demanded, the words sharp but heavy with panic. "Where's your car?" I swallowed hard, the lump in my throat catching as I tried to answer. The story was messy, painful, and humiliating, but I had no choice. "His mom took it," I said quietly, my voice cracking. "Said I'm lucky they let me stay." I watched his expression change, the initial shock giving way to a cold, unwavering resolve. There was no pity there, no hesitation, only the kind of protective anger that made you realize this man would move mountains to defend his family. He stepped closer, the lines in his face deepening with the weight of his worry. "Get in the car, we're fixing this tonight," he said, his voice leaving no room for argument. I nodded, feeling a strange mix of relief and fear. Relief that he was here, fear of what fixing this might entail. But I trusted him, always had. My father wasn't just strong, he was smart, careful, and relentless when someone he loved was hurt. And right now, I was hurt in ways that went beyond bruises or scraped knees. This was betrayal, humiliation, and the kind of helplessness that sinks into your bones and refuses to leave. As we climbed into the car, my baby stirred, sensing my tension, and I adjusted her in my arms, murmuring soft words to calm her. My dad drove in silence at first, his jaw tight, knuckles white as he gripped the steering wheel. I wanted to ask questions, to understand what exactly he was planning, but I knew better. He needed to think, and I needed to trust him. The streetlights passed in a blur, casting fleeting shadows across his face, and I caught a glimpse of something I hadn't seen in years, a mixture of anger and determination that made my chest tighten. He was furious, yes, but this fury was controlled, focused. He wasn't going to lash out blindly. He was going to make sure that whoever had hurt me, whoever had taken advantage of me when I was most vulnerable, would face consequences they hadn't imagined. I stared out the window, the city lights reflecting in my eyes, and let myself feel something I hadn't in a long time. Hope. It was fragile, yes, like a small flame flickering in the dark, but it was there. For the first time in weeks, I didn't feel entirely alone. My dad was here. He had always been my protector, my anchor, the one person who could see through the fog of lies and betrayal and find a way to make things right. And tonight, I realized he wasn't just going to protect me, he was going to fight for me. The car turned a corner, heading toward a night that promised reckoning. My heart pounded, not just from the limp in my leg or the weight of my baby, but from the surge of emotions I couldn't name. Fear, yes, but also relief. Anger, yes, but also courage. And beneath it all, a tiny spark of anticipation. Tonight, something was going to change. And somehow, I knew I wasn't going to be the same again. The car ride ended at my dad's house, not the place I had expected, but the place I needed most. As soon as we stepped inside, the warmth hit me, not just from the heater, but from the familiarity. My dad gently took the baby from my arms, rocking her like it was second nature, even though he hadn't done it in years. The sight nearly broke me. I sank into the couch, my leg throbbing, my heart heavier than ever. "Tell me everything," he said softly, once the baby had settled. There was no anger in his tone now, only patience and certainty. He wasn't rushing me. He wasn't judging. He was listening. So I talked. I told him how it started with small comments, how his mom slowly took control of everything: money, the car, even decisions about my own child. How every time I spoke up, I was reminded that I was lucky to be there. Lucky to have a roof. Lucky they helped me. Lucky they hadn't already kicked me out. The word lucky tasted bitter every time I said it. My dad's face stayed calm, but I saw it in his eyes. Every detail added another crack to the restraint he was holding on to. When I finished, I felt hollow, like I had poured out everything I had left. "That wasn't help," he said finally. "That was control." I nodded, tears slipping down my face before I could stop them. "I thought if I just stayed quiet, things would get better." "They count on that," he replied. "People like that always do." He set the baby down gently and sat across from me, leaning forward. "We're not going to yell, we're not going to beg, and we're definitely not going to lose our dignity, but we are going to take your power back." For the first time, I looked up. "How?" "By doing everything the right way," he said. "Paper trails, calm conversations, witnesses, truth." He explained it slowly, carefully, like he was rebuilding me piece by piece. First, we would get my belongings and my child's things, legally, peacefully. No shouting, no scenes. Then we would make it clear that I was leaving by choice, not because I was thrown out. That mattered more than I realized. "You don't owe them silence," he said, "but you don't owe them chaos either." We talked for hours about boundaries, about how kindness doesn't mean surrender, about how some people mistake patience for weakness and how dangerous that mistake can be. I watched him write things down, dates and details I hadn't thought were important. Every note felt like another brick in the foundation he was helping me rebuild. I felt stronger just sitting there, watching someone believe me without question. Before the night ended, he handed me my phone. "Tomorrow, you'll send one message. Polite, clear, calm. That's all. I'll be with you every step." I exhaled deeply, realizing how long I had been holding my breath. That night, lying in the spare room with my baby asleep beside me, I stared at the ceiling. For the first time in months, I wasn't replaying arguments in my head or bracing myself for the next insult. I wasn't afraid of footsteps in the hallway or doors slamming shut. I felt safe. And somewhere between the steady hum of the heater and my baby's soft breathing, I understood something important. Revenge didn't have to be loud to be powerful. Sometimes the sweetest kind came from walking away stronger, calmer, and unbreakable, while the people who tried to control you were left with nothing but the truth. Tomorrow, the plan would begin. The morning light spilled through the blinds, cutting through the shadows of the night I had spent thinking, planning, and finally sleeping without fear. My baby stirred beside me, yawning and stretching, and for the first time in what felt like forever, I didn't feel the weight of helplessness pressing me down. My dad was already awake, moving quietly in the kitchen, making coffee and preparing for what we both knew was going to be a long day. When I stepped into the kitchen, he looked up and gave me that same calm, unwavering gaze I had grown to rely on. "Ready?" he asked, not a hint of doubt in his voice. I nodded, clutching my baby a little tighter. "As ready as I'll ever be." We drove in silence for a few minutes, the city streets waking around us, until we pulled up outside the house where everything had gone wrong. My stomach knotted, my leg throbbed with every step, but my father's presence steadied me. He didn't push me. He walked beside me, a silent shield against whatever lay ahead. The door opened before we even knocked. Her face, a mixture of surprise and feigned calm, looked straight at me. For a second I felt that old fear creep back, the one that had made me walk alone in the street just days before. But I didn't let it take hold. I remembered my father's words, calm, clear, and unshakable. "I'm here to get my things," I said quietly, holding my head high. My father stayed behind me, letting me lead. Every eye in the room was on me, and for the first time I realized the power of standing tall when everyone expects you to crumble. Her initial smirk faltered when she saw my father step forward. He didn't raise his voice or threaten. He simply said, "We're leaving with everything that belongs to her. There will be no arguments. There will be no delays." The tone in his voice carried a weight that made it clear any resistance would be noticed and documented. As we gathered my belongings, I felt a strange sense of satisfaction, not from revenge and anger, but from the quiet justice of reclaiming what was mine. Every item I carried, every small possession of my child's that I rescued from her control, felt like a piece of my dignity restored. Then came the confrontation I had dreaded. She tried to corner me, to manipulate me with her words, claiming I was being dramatic, claiming I didn't understand, claiming I was lucky she had let me stay at all. I looked at her, and for the first time, I didn't flinch. My voice was steady, my words clear. "No," I said simply. "I'm not lucky. I'm strong. And I won't allow anyone to control me or my child. That ends today." She stumbled over her words, searching for a retort, but none came. The calm authority in my father's presence left no room for manipulation, no room for lies. The truth was undeniable, and for the first time, she realized that the control she had held over me for months had vanished. By the time we stepped back into the car, the air felt lighter, almost electric. I glanced at my father, who gave me a small, approving nod. No one had been hurt, no chaos had erupted, and yet the victory was complete. The tables had turned, not with anger, but with courage, planning, and quiet strength. Driving away, I felt a surge of emotions: relief, pride, and an unexpected joy. My baby rested in my arms, the weight of the past months slowly lifting, and I realized that this was more than just reclaiming possessions or proving a point. This was the start of reclaiming my life. For the first time in what felt like forever, I felt untouchable, not because I had taken revenge, but because I had taken back my power. And as we drove into the brightening day, I knew one thing with absolute certainty: nothing and no one could ever make me feel small again. The ride home was quiet, but it wasn't heavy. There was a calm that had been absent from my life for months, maybe even years. My baby slept softly in my arms, her tiny fingers curling around mine, and for the first time, I allowed myself to breathe without holding back. The tension that had been lodged in my chest felt lighter, like it was finally being released. At home, my dad helped me unpack the few things we had brought back: my clothes, my baby's favorite toys, the small sentimental items that had once seemed insignificant, but now felt like treasures reclaimed. He moved carefully, quietly, giving me space but always nearby, a steady presence that reminded me I was never alone. We sat together after everything was put away, sharing a simple dinner. There was no celebratory toast, no loud laughter, only a quiet satisfaction and the kind of peace that comes after a storm. I glanced at my dad and saw that same pride in his eyes that I felt swelling in my chest. He hadn't just helped me take back my things. He had helped me reclaim my confidence, my dignity, my life. "It's done," he said finally, breaking the silence. "No one can take this from you again." I nodded, swallowing the lump in my throat. "I feel lighter," I admitted, the words tasting strange and wonderful on my tongue. "Like I'm finally free." "Good," he said, smiling softly, "because freedom isn't just about leaving. It's about knowing your worth and refusing to let anyone diminish it." For a long moment, we simply sat there. The baby stirred again, and I rocked her gently, feeling the simple joy of being with her without fear, without anxiety. In that quiet room, surrounded by the familiar, I realized something profound. The sweetest revenge isn't in getting even. It isn't in causing pain or anger. It's in walking away stronger, calmer, and unshakable, while the people who tried to control you watch from the outside, powerless. Over the next few days, I noticed subtle changes. People who had once overlooked me suddenly saw a confidence they hadn't expected. My baby seemed calmer, more secure, as if she could sense the peace I had fought to reclaim. And somewhere, in the far distance of my mind, I felt the satisfaction of knowing that those who had tried to manipulate and control me would never have that power again. Life began to settle into a rhythm I hadn't known I was capable of. Morning walks with my baby, quiet evenings with my dad, simple routines that once seemed impossible became my new normal. I laughed more freely, I slept more soundly, and I began to believe in myself again, not the version that had been timid and hesitant, but the one who had faced betrayal, stood her ground, and emerged stronger. One evening, as I tucked my baby into bed, I caught my reflection in the mirror. I barely recognized the woman staring back. She was calmer, steadier, more certain. There were still faint scars from the battles I had faced, emotional ones that no one could see, but they no longer defined me. Instead, they were reminders of how far I had come and how strong I truly was. My dad came in then, leaning against the doorway. He smiled, and in that moment, I understood something fully. What we had done wasn't just about confronting someone who had wronged me. It was about reclaiming life, building strength, and discovering that no matter what happens, love, courage, and resilience are more powerful than fear, manipulation, or betrayal. I hugged him tightly, feeling a warmth that went beyond words, and as I held my baby close afterward, I whispered softly, "We're okay now. We're really okay." For the first time in a long time, it wasn't just true. It felt permanent. The storm had passed, the wounds were beginning to heal, and the future stretched ahead of us bright and unshakable. And in that quiet, glowing moment, I realized that the sweetest revenge of all wasn't in what we took back or what we exposed. It was in reclaiming our happiness, our peace, and our lives.